The scent of old paper and brewing coffee, a comforting aroma that had been the backdrop to Miles Corbin's life for the past decade, usually soothed the knots in his shoulders. Today, however, as he casually browsed the poetry section of the Book Nook, his own beloved independent bookstore, a prickle of unease danced on his skin. He wore a slightly too big flannel shirt and faded jeans, a deliberate disguise for his undercover stint as the new, supposedly clueless, stock assistant. The point was to observe, to understand the daily rhythms and the genuine concerns of his employees without the weight of his CEO title looming over them. He ran a hand over the worn spine of a Whitman anthology, the familiar texture grounding him momentarily. But the disquiet persisted, a subtle hum beneath the surface of the store's gentle murmur. He'd noticed it since he'd started this charade a week ago. Fleeting glances, hushed conversations that ceased abruptly upon his approach, a shared knowing in the eyes of some of his longest-serving staff. It was as if an invisible thread connected them, a secret language spoken through glances and silences that he, the supposed outsider, couldn't decipher. He moved towards the history section, feigning interest in a hefty volume on the American Civil War. That's when he heard them. Two voices, low and earnest, drifted from the alcove tucked behind the towering shelves of biographies. He recognized one immediately, Bethany, his fiercely loyal manager, a woman who treated the bookstore as if it were her own. The other voice was softer, younger, possibly Leo, the quiet college student who worked part-time. Miles froze, his hand hovering over a book he wasn't truly seeing. Their words, though indistinct, carried a weight that snagged his attention. He leaned closer, pretending to adjust a nearby display, his heart beginning a slow, heavy thrum against his ribs. "Remember that day, Beth?" Leo's voice was barely a whisper. The rain was coming down sideways, and the power went out. Bethany's reply was a low sigh, a sound thick with a complicated emotion Miles couldn't quite place. How could I forget, Leo? It felt like the end of the world for a little while there. A jolt, sharp and unexpected, shot through Miles. The rain, the power outage. He remembered that day vividly. It had been 5 years ago, almost to the day. A freak summer storm had plunged the entire block into darkness. He'd been here, working late in his small, cluttered office upstairs, wrestling with a crucial business decision that could have made or broken the Book Nook. He'd come downstairs amidst the flickering emergency lights to find his staff huddled together, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of their phone screens. But it wasn't just the shared memory of the storm that made his blood run cold. It was the way Bethany had reacted that day. Amidst the minor chaos, she had been a beacon of calm, organizing the staff, reassuring worried customers with a quiet strength he hadn't known she possessed. And then there was the incident with the old first edition of Moby Dick, a valuable piece he kept locked in a display case. In the darkness and confusion, someone had tried to steal it. Bethany, with surprising speed and courage, had intervened, preventing the theft. He'd been so grateful, so impressed. He'd meant to commend her properly, but in the whirlwind of getting the store back in order, the moment had passed. Now, listening to their hushed tones, a disquieting thought began to form in Miles's mind. Had the attempted theft been an inside job? Had Bethany and Leo been involved? The shared memory of the storm, instead of being a simple anecdote, now felt like a potential anchor to something darker, something he hadn't seen. The invisible thread connecting them suddenly felt taut with suspicion. Miles retreated slowly, his mind racing. He couldn't confront them directly, not yet. His undercover role was his shield, his opportunity to uncover the truth without revealing his hand. He needed to observe more, to listen, to understand the nuances of their interactions. The easy camaraderie he'd witnessed amongst his staff now seemed laced with a layer of secrecy, a shared history he was only beginning to glimpse. The comfort of the bookstore had evaporated, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease. He felt a strange disconnect, an outsider in his own world, suddenly unsure of the people he'd trusted for years. The familiar scent of books now carried a faint, unsettling odor of mystery. Over the next few days, Miles intensified his observations. He noticed the way Bethany and Leo would exchange quick, almost imperceptible glances across the store. He heard fragments of their conversations, a mention of that night, a shared sigh, a knowing silence that spoke volumes. He watched as Bethany meticulously handled a specific first edition, a collection of Poe's short stories, her fingers lingering on its spine with an almost reverent touch. It wasn't the Moby Dick, but the intensity of her focus felt significant. One afternoon, Miles found himself shelving books near the back office, the door slightly ajar. He heard Bethany's voice, her tone laced with anxiety. "We can't keep doing this, Leo. It's eating me up inside." Leo's response was a low murmur, almost inaudible. Miles strained to hear. "We don't have a choice, Beth. Not after what happened." Miles's breath hitched. "What happened?" The question echoed in his mind, heavy with foreboding. He leaned closer, his senses on high alert. "He almost found out," Bethany continued, her voice trembling slightly. "That inventory check last month. I thought for sure." "But he didn't," Leo interjected, his voice gaining a nervous edge. "And he won't. We just have to be careful." The inventory check. Miles remembered it. There had been a discrepancy, a missing first edition, a collection of early Hemingway stories. He'd chalked it up to a misplaced item, a simple error. Now, Bethany's words painted a far more sinister picture. Later that day, Miles found Leo meticulously cleaning the glass of the display case that usually housed valuable first editions. He approached casually, feigning interest. "Taking good care of our treasures, Leo?" Leo startled, a flicker of something. Fear? Guilt? Crossing his young face before he masked it with a polite smile. "Just trying to keep everything looking nice, Mr. Miles." He still hadn't quite gotten used to calling his boss by his first name. "That's a beautiful Poe collection we have," Miles said, gesturing towards the book Bethany had been handling earlier. "Quite valuable, I believe." Leo's eyes darted to the book, then back to Miles, his smile faltering slightly. "Yeah, it is. Bethany's very careful with it." The way he said Bethany's name, a subtle emphasis, a hint of something unspoken, didn't escape Miles's notice. The invisible thread seemed to be tightening, pulling him closer to a truth he wasn't sure he wanted to face. The tension in the bookstore thickened over the next few days. Miles observed a growing unease between Bethany and another longtime employee, Olivia, a sharp-witted woman who usually had a smile for everyone. Now, Olivia's gaze often lingered on Bethany with a hint of suspicion, her usual banter replaced by a guarded silence. One afternoon, Miles saw Olivia surreptitiously looking through some old inventory records in the back office when Bethany walked in. Olivia quickly closed the ledger, a flush rising on her cheeks. "Everything all right, Olivia?" Bethany asked, her voice a little too bright. "Just double-checking some figures," Olivia replied, her tone cool. The exchange was brief, but the undercurrent of mistrust was palpable. Miles felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Whatever secret connected Bethany and Leo seemed to be creating rifts within the close-knit staff. Then came the breakthrough. Miles, feigning the task of organizing the dusty archives in the basement, stumbled upon a misplaced file. It was labeled Insurance Claim, Storm Damage. Inside, amidst the water-stained documents, was a detailed list of missing inventory from the night of the power outage 5 years ago. And there it was, not just the Moby Dick, but also the early Hemingway collection and a first edition of Edgar Allan Poe's tales. The very book Bethany had been handling so carefully. A cold wave of understanding washed over Miles. The attempted theft of the Moby Dick had been a cover. The real target had been the Poe collection. And Bethany and Leo, they hadn't prevented a theft, they had been part of it. The "what happened" Bethany had referred to in her hushed conversation with Leo now echoed in Miles's mind with chilling clarity. The inventory check where she thought he'd almost found out, it wasn't about the Hemingway. It was about the Poe. The shared memory of the storm, the catalyst for their crime, was the very thread that bound them, a neural coupling forged in a moment of opportunity and desperation. Their hushed conversations, their knowing glances, Olivia's suspicion, it all clicked into place. Miles leaned against a damp concrete wall, the weight of this revelation pressing down on him. Bethany, the loyal manager he'd trusted implicitly, had betrayed him. And Leo, the quiet young man with so much potential, was entangled in her deception. He thought back to that night, the flickering emergency lights illuminating Bethany's determined face as she supposedly thwarted the Moby Dick thief. It was all a carefully orchestrated performance, a way to deflect suspicion while the real prize, the Poe collection, was secured. He felt a profound sense of betrayal, a sharp ache in his chest. This wasn't just about stolen books, it was about broken trust, about the shattering of the family he thought he had built within the walls of the Book Nook. He knew he couldn't stay silent. He had to confront them, to understand their motivations, to unravel the full extent of their deception. But a part of him, the part that still cherished the memory of Bethany's dedication and Leo's quiet enthusiasm, hesitated. He had to tread carefully, to ensure that the truth came to light without causing irreparable damage. He took a deep breath, the musty air heavy in his lungs. His undercover stint had revealed a truth far more complex and painful than he could have imagined. The invisible threads that connected his staff were not the bonds of loyalty he had believed in, but the tangled strands of a shared secret, a secret he was now determined to unravel. Miles walked slowly back upstairs, the weight of his knowledge a heavy burden. He saw Bethany arranging a display of new releases, her brow furrowed in concentration. He saw Leo assisting a customer with a quiet smile. They looked like any other bookstore employees, dedicated and hardworking. But beneath the surface, a lie festered, a shared history that had twisted into something dark. He knew what he had to do. The charade had to end. It was time for the undercover boss to reveal himself, not with anger, but with a heavy heart and a quest for understanding. The neural coupling of their shared crime had created a ripple effect of suspicion and unease, and it was his responsibility to address it, to try and salvage what remained of the trust within his beloved bookstore. Please subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed the story.